Chapter 38 begins the second section of the Tao Te Ching. This is the Book of Virtue. Laozi explains that virtue has two levels. There is higher virtue and lower virtue. Suppose a person must constantly remind himself to stay virtuous. He has already fallen into the realm of lower virtue. Laozi says ritual is the mere husk of loyalty. It is the shell of good faith. He calls it the beginning of disorder. China is known as the land of ritual and courtesy. Why does Laozi see ritual as the root of chaos? What deeper meaning lies within this wisdom? Let us continue following Zheng Shiqiang's reading of the Tao Te Ching. In Chapter 1, Laozi opens with a famous line. The Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. The Tao has two dimensions. There is the eternal Tao and the expressible Tao. The Tao is a whole and cannot be divided. But virtue is different. In Chapter 38, Laozi speaks clearly. Higher virtue does not cling to virtue, therefore it truly possesses virtue. Lower virtue never lets go of virtue, therefore it has no true virtue. Virtue divides into higher and lower levels. Does this mean the Tao itself can be split? No. The eternal and expressible forms are both still the Tao. But the levels of virtue are a different matter. What is virtue? Virtue is the first step away from the Tao. This is where division begins. The Tao is whole and indivisible, but virtue, by its nature, must be distinguished. We must separate higher virtue from lower virtue. We must understand this distinction clearly. Most people cannot distinguish ultimate truth from ordinary principle. It is rare to find someone who has fully penetrated the truth. This has been the reality since ancient times. Understanding virtue is even more difficult. Each person seems to embody only a small part of it. One person has filial virtue, another has loyal virtue, another has courageous virtue. Everyone can only express a portion. Chapter 1 speaks of the Tao. Chapter 38 speaks of virtue. This is why the Tao Te Ching has two parts. Chapters 1 through 37 form the Book of the Tao. Chapters 38 through 81 form the Book of Virtue. We will now explore the Book of Virtue chapter by chapter. Our goal is to make its meaning clear. Higher virtue does not cling to virtue. A person of the highest virtue does not worry about being virtuous. This concept can be confusing. It means you should not constantly think about your image. Do not worry about displaying your character to others. If you do, you have ceased to have higher virtue. Laozi does not want us to perform or protect our virtue. Higher virtue means acting without intention. It means following nature without labels. You must be fully present in the process. Do not attach yourself to outcomes. Outcomes are always changing. Laozi asks us to follow nature and act from the heart. Do not keep the idea of virtue constantly in mind. Only then can you truly be called virtuous. Reaching higher virtue is extraordinarily difficult. It belongs to those who have attained the highest way. What about lower virtue? Lower virtue is constantly telling yourself to stay virtuous. It is worrying that others might look down on you. Laozi believes such a person is already without virtue. The intention to perform for others is an impure motivation. I must say something that may offend some people. Many individuals display signals of their faith or practice. If you read Chapter 38, you may feel these things are unnecessary. Beginners often rely on these outward supports, but gradually your feelings will change. If you truly follow nature, who are you performing for? Naturally, these outward displays will fall away. We often see a common pattern in people. At first, they have no beliefs. Then, they take up a faith with great enthusiasm. After a while, they let it go. First, you see the mountain as a mountain. Then, the mountain is not a mountain. Finally, the mountain is a mountain again. When you truly see it, the size does not matter. It simply is what it is. You stop worrying about what others are doing. That is when you understand higher virtue. A virtuous person does not care if others notice them. They are not performing for an audience. They simply act with a clear conscience. Preoccupation with moral conduct can ruin your original nature. It leads you into the realm of the conditioned. Laozi continues with these words: higher virtue acts without intention. Lower virtue acts with intention. Acting without intention is true higher virtue. What is the difference between these types of action? Laozi explains this for us. A person of higher virtue acts without contrivance. He does not violate nature. He has no deliberate design. He does not perform for others to see. The word intention means calculation or deliberateness. Some people are polite just to look cultivated. Others hold back to appear gracious. Some step aside just to seem humble. In Laozi's eyes, this is unnatural and affected. We cannot say such people are bad. However, their inner motivation is already impure. A person should act without any scheme or strategy. They should have no ulterior purpose. They must not use moral character as a means to an end. That person embodies true, noble virtue. What about lower virtue? It is still a form of non-action, but it has intention. Both levels involve non-action, which is already a high stage. But higher virtue has no contrivance. Lower virtue does. A person might follow their conscience but worry about appearances. They think about the results they will achieve. That is a step down. The same act can be viewed in different ways. Thoughts of perception and outcomes change everything. In today's world, this is almost inevitable. We cannot entirely ignore how others see us. In the past, people lived together and knew each other's hearts. They could tell if humility was genuine. They knew if a person was sincere. Today, people are often suspicious. They assume everyone is playing games. You must adapt these principles to the modern world. But do not worry too much. Laozi already anticipated all of this. Chapter 38 continues. Higher benevolence acts without intention. Higher righteousness acts with intention. Higher ritual acts and expects a response. If there is no response, it compels compliance. History is full of cruelty and injustice. Why does Laozi only speak of higher benevolence? Why does he ignore the lower counterparts? Where did the lower forms go? Laozi believes these qualities only matter at the higher level. The lower levels are not even worth mentioning. This is the first thing we must understand. Higher benevolence acts without intention. It has no ulterior motive or fixed agenda. Laozi understood Confucius very well. Confucius wanted everyone to understand the way. He introduced the concept of benevolence. He felt the Tao might be too difficult for some. He taught people to have a humane heart. A humane heart has no calculating self-interest. It is not driven by utilitarian thinking. I treat you with humanity because we are both human. I treat animals with humanity as well. This is what benevolence truly means. It cannot be purposeful or selfish. The word act suggests movement. Some people think non-action means doing nothing. That is a mistake. Higher virtue and higher benevolence both lack contrivance, but higher virtue is non-action. Higher benevolence involves action. Confucianism advocates for engaging with the world. Taoism advocates for following nature first. On this point, the two schools are actually quite close. The schools diverged during the time of Mencius. The world had fallen into chaos. Benevolence had become just a lofty ideal. Mencius felt he had to champion righteousness. Laozi saw this coming. Higher righteousness acts with intention. It is no longer free of contrivance. Kings would ask Mencius about the benefits he brought. Today, we still hear the same questions. People always ask what they will gain. The utilitarian drive is overwhelming. We must read these texts carefully. Today, righteousness and ritual are commonplace. What does lower ritual look like? It is scolding someone for their bad manners. But does scolding them make you more mannerly? Higher ritual is a step higher. It involves showing courtesy and expecting it in return. If there is no response, the person tries to compel it. They use words to instruct and correct. We call this moral education. To Confucians, this is a remarkable responsibility. But Laozi sees it differently. He says society only needs these things when it is in disorder. Laozi offers a conclusion. When the Tao is lost, virtue appears. When virtue is lost, benevolence appears. When benevolence is lost, righteousness appears. When righteousness is lost, ritual appears. With the Tao, there is no need for these things. In a peaceful nation, there is no need for heroes. Everyone naturally loves their home. Loyalty is only highlighted during times of chaos. Laozi sees these traits as signs of disorder. He says ritual is the husk of loyalty. He calls it the beginning of chaos. China is the land of ritual and propriety. Courtesy is a basic human principle. So why does Laozi see ritual as the root of chaos? Laozi says ritual is just a thin shell. It shows that loyalty and faith have grown weak. Disorder begins when ritual takes over. This criticism may seem harsh to some, but Laozi is simply observing natural patterns. Natural patterns are profoundly important. In history, no one spoke of ritual when the Tao prevailed. These things existed, but they were not needed. There was no demand for them. When the Tao was lost, people spoke of virtue. When virtue was lost, they turned to benevolence. They tried to treat others as they wished to be treated. Then, those people grew few, so they turned to righteousness and fairness. Finally, they turned to ritual. As society evolved this way, it became more disordered. Loyalty and trust had disappeared. The emphasis on ritual unraveled society. This is not the fault of ritual, it is the fault of human beings. We should not be satisfied with mere courtesy. We must aspire to rise higher. Move from ritual to righteousness. Move from righteousness to benevolence. Step by step, go upward toward the Tao. That is the true intention here. Many people think politeness is enough. They smile and speak with courtesy, but lack sincerity. They believe ritual is sufficient. But righteousness is higher. It means knowing when to help in a crisis. Yet righteousness still carries intention. It is often a performance for praise. So we must aspire to benevolence. Benevolence asks for no recognition. You simply do what you ought to do. You act rightly, regardless of judgment. In the past, scholars studied for themselves. Now, they study for others. Confucius lamented this even in his own time. We must reflect on this deeply. Why does each generation fall further? External temptations overwhelm us. We cannot govern our own inner world. This is our most urgent lesson. We live in a complex and turbulent world. How do we reach higher virtue? What guidance does Laozi offer? Laozi continues. Foreknowledge is the flower of the Tao. It is the beginning of folly. Some people think they are ahead of others. They believe they see what others cannot. In truth, they only see the surface. They see the outermost ornament of the Tao. These people are the ones who are harmed. If you only see the surface, you are on thin ice. That is where foolishness begins. We often say humanity is growing more intelligent. Laozi believed we are growing more foolish. He observed a long stretch of history. He rarely spoke of golden ages or ancient kings. His stance was simple. The great person dwells in the substantial. He does not stand on the thin surface. Laozi rarely uses the phrase great person. In his entire book, it appears only once. His great person is different from that of Mencius. It is not a towering figure of righteous spirit. Laozi's great person follows the Tao naturally. They attain what is to be attained without effort. Such a person stands on the thick ice. People from the north understand this well. In winter, the ice looks uniform. But if you stand on thin ice, you will fall. You must find the thick ice to be safe. What does it mean to be thick? It means seeing the source of the Tao. It means perceiving its higher dimensions. You gain something real from that vision. This is what it means to have a solid foundation.